Tonight, we journey into the shadows, unraveling stories of terrifying encounters with entities from realms beyond. If you think you're brave enough, join us as we delve into accounts that defy logic and chill the soul. But beware! Each tale serves as a haunting reminder that some doors should remain closed. Title: The Shadows of Greystone Manor. The old manor sat solemnly on a hill, towering over the valley as if it had been there since time began. The house was an imposing structure, with stone walls gray and worn, and ivy creeping up its sides like ancient veins pulsing with history. For the Lawson family, Greystone Manor was a dream come true, or at least that's how they saw it at first. The Lawsons had longed for a quieter life, away from the chaos of city living. Thomas and Rachel Lawson wanted their children, 8-year-old Sam and 13-year-old Lily, to grow up surrounded by nature and history, with room to roam and space to breathe. And with Thomas's recent promotion, they could finally afford to buy Greystone Manor. But as they unpacked boxes and settled in, an unease began to settle in the manor's shadowy halls. On their first night, Rachel awoke to a sound she couldn't place. It was subtle, barely audible, a faint whisper that seemed to drift through the hallway just outside their bedroom door. She told herself it was the wind or the old house settling, and she closed her eyes, willing herself back to sleep. The days passed in a blur of organizing and cleaning, and soon, the whisper Rachel heard that first night was forgotten. But Lily noticed things too. Late one evening, while brushing her teeth in the upstairs bathroom, she saw something move in the mirror. A shadow, faint but unmistakable, just behind her shoulder. When she turned around, there was nothing there. She convinced herself it was her imagination, that she'd been watching too many horror movies. But later that night, as she lay in bed, she heard footsteps echoing in the hallway. Slow, deliberate steps, like someone pacing back and forth, growing louder and then fading into silence. She pulled the covers over her head, listening intently, heart pounding, until she eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep. The whispers became more frequent, and they grew louder, too, as if the unseen voices wanted the family to know they were there. Sam heard them as he played in his room, and once, he even thought he saw a face in the window. A face pale as death, with hollow eyes staring at him from outside. The family began talking about these strange happenings, each of them confessing to seeing or hearing things they couldn't explain. But Thomas, ever the skeptic, insisted there was a rational explanation for everything. He said the manor was old, that creaks and drafts were natural in a house of its age. But deep down, they all felt it. An oppressive presence watching them, lurking in every corner and shadow. Rachel noticed that Sam was more withdrawn, that Lily was jumpy and constantly looking over her shoulder. They tried to ignore it, to push through the eerie sensations, but it was as if the house was testing them, probing their weaknesses and fears. Unable to shake their discomfort, the family began researching the manor's past. They spoke to neighbors and visited the local library, piecing together the story of Greystone Manor. They learned of a previous family that had lived there long ago, a family torn apart by tragedy and betrayal. The youngest child of that family had drowned mysteriously, and the parents, racked with grief, had spiraled into despair. Rumors swirled about their ghosts haunting the house, forever bound to the place where their pain had taken root. As Rachel read these stories, she began to wonder if the anguish of those long-gone lives had somehow seeped into the walls of Greystone, leaving an indelible mark, a spiritual stain that couldn't be washed away. Desperate for peace, the Lawsons tried everything. Blessings, cleansings, even a medium who spoke of restless souls trapped in the manor. Each attempt seemed to provoke the spirits further. The footsteps grew louder, and shadows became more defined, appearing in doorways and along walls. The family could feel the spirits' pain, their anger, their unwillingness to leave. But instead of fleeing, they decided to face it head-on. They gathered in the living room one evening, holding hands and calling out to the spirits, inviting them to show themselves, to tell their story. In that moment, the atmosphere changed. The air grew heavy, and suddenly, they were surrounded by a vision of the past. A young girl's laughter, a mother's anguished cries, a father's bitter silence. As they witnessed these fragments of history, they understood. The spirits were trapped, not out of malice, but out of sorrow. And as the family acknowledged the pain that lingered, they felt an eerie calm descend over them. From that day forward, the hauntings ceased. Greystone Manor, though still haunted in its own way, became a place of peace, a place where the Lawsons could finally feel at home. They had learned to coexist with the past, to respect the lives that had come before them. The haunting, they realized, had been as much a reflection of their own fears as it was a manifestation of the house's tragic history. The story of Greystone Manor became one of healing and acceptance, a journey that taught them about the power of compassion and understanding, even for those who dwell in the shadows. Title: The shadow at my window. Moving to a new town had never been easy. For Alex, who had spent 17 years in a familiar neighborhood with friends they had known since kindergarten, the change was jarring. The new town felt smaller and quieter, with streets lined by thick trees that cast eerie shadows at dusk. Alex felt an unshakable sense of dread, an irrational fear that something wasn't quite right. The new house didn't help matters. It was old, with creaky wooden floors and tall windows that cast moonlit patterns across Alex's bedroom walls. On the first night, Alex lay in bed, staring at those patterns, feeling a discomfort they couldn't quite place. That was when it happened. Just as Alex was about to drift off, a shadow appeared at the window. It was faint, almost indistinguishable from the darkness outside. But there it was, the shape of a figure standing impossibly still. Alex blinked, heart racing, but when they looked back, it was gone. They told themselves it was nothing. A trick of the light, perhaps, or an overactive imagination adjusting to a new place. Little did they know, it would be the first of many sightings. By the third night, Alex was convinced it wasn't their imagination. The shadow appeared again, almost as if it was waiting. This time, it lingered a bit longer, just long enough for Alex to see the outline of what might have been eyes. Hollow, empty eyes that stared through the glass, as if looking not at Alex, but into them. Each night, the figure returned, and each night Alex found themselves paralyzed, unable to move or look away. There was a peculiar allure to the shadow, something almost familiar yet deeply unsettling. As the days passed, Alex found themselves haunted not only at night but throughout the day as well. They started avoiding mirrors, fearing they might catch a glimpse of those empty eyes. Friends noticed the change. Alex grew quieter, more withdrawn, and even sleep-deprived. Just tired, Alex would tell them, brushing off their concern, unwilling to admit the truth that even they struggled to believe. One evening, desperate for answers, Alex decided to start a diary. Every night after the shadow appeared, Alex would jot down every detail they could recall, trying to find some pattern, some meaning. March 5th, 1:13 a.m. The shadow appeared again. This time it stayed longer. I think it might be closer than before. March 6th, 1:10 a.m. It's definitely closer. The shape is clearer, but the face is blank. March 8th, 1:07 a.m. I can see its eyes now, hollow and dark. I feel like it's staring into me, seeing something I can't even see. Writing became Alex's only refuge. Each word felt like a small release of the terror that had taken root in their mind. Yet, the figure's presence persisted, each night getting closer, each night more defined. One morning, Alex's mother noticed the diary open on the bed. "What's this?" she asked, picking it up with a frown. Alex snatched it away, feeling their heart pound. "Just writing down some thoughts," they mumbled, avoiding her gaze. But Alex's mother wasn't so easily convinced. She sensed her child's distress, though she couldn't quite place its source. That afternoon, Alex's mother gently suggested that Alex see a counselor. "Maybe it'll help," she said, her voice soft yet insistent. Alex was reluctant at first, but the idea of sharing their experience with someone who might understand was tempting. That night, as they lay awake, waiting for the shadow to return, Alex decided to give it a chance. Dr. Harper was calm and patient, listening without judgment as Alex explained the sightings, and the sense of dread that had come with them. Sometimes, Dr. Harper said, our mind plays tricks on us. Stress, anxiety, even suppressed emotions. They can all manifest in ways that feel very real. Dr. Harper introduced the concept of projection. Think of it as your mind's way of dealing with something you might not be ready to confront. Have you experienced any recent stress or change? Alex hesitated. The move, the sense of displacement, of not belonging. They'd buried those feelings, focusing instead on adapting and surviving. But the shadow had forced them to confront these fears, to face a part of themselves they had tried so hard to ignore. One evening, as Alex sat by the window, waiting, they felt a strange calm settle over them. When the shadow appeared, Alex didn't look away. "Who are you?" Alex whispered, feeling both ridiculous and terrified. For the first time, the shadow moved, tilting its head as if it were listening, as if it understood. It didn't speak, but in that silence, Alex felt an understanding. A realization that the shadow wasn't an enemy but a mirror reflecting back everything they had avoided. Night after night, Alex began to address the shadow, speaking out loud the fears and insecurities that had haunted them. The loneliness, the loss of familiar friendships, the anxiety of fitting in. Each admission felt like shedding a layer, exposing a raw vulnerability but feeling lighter with every word. The final confrontation came one stormy night. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the rain lashed against the glass. The shadow appeared, more defined than ever, its hollow eyes almost sad. Alex stood up, walked to the window, and, for the first time, opened it. Rain splattered against their face as they stood face to face with the figure. "You're not real," Alex said, voice steady. "You're just a part of me. A part one was too afraid to face." The shadow blinked, as if acknowledging the truth. And then, slowly, it faded, leaving Alex standing alone in the storm. The heaviness, the suffocating dread, lifted as if a weight had been removed from their chest. After that night, Alex's life took a turn. The shadow never returned, but its presence lingered in a different way, as a reminder of the strength it took to confront fear and self-doubt. Alex continued therapy, finding solace in exploring their thoughts and emotions with Dr. Harper's guidance. The diary became a symbol of growth, a record of the journey from fear to acceptance. Each entry chronicled a step towards self-understanding, a journey from seeing the shadow as an enemy to recognizing it as a catalyst for change. Title: Echoes of Forgotten Laughter. When Laura stepped out of her car, the chill of the autumn air hit her, carrying the unmistakable scent of wet leaves and earth. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, memories swirling like leaves caught in a breeze. It had been years since she'd been back, and the town felt both familiar and foreign. She thought about her mother, about the house she had come back to empty out. Grief stirred within her, and a pang of nostalgia hit her as she gazed down the street, towards the fields where she used to play. The first time Laura heard the laughter, she was walking along the dirt path beside the field. The area was now just an open lot, overgrown and wild, but Laura could almost picture the old schoolhouse that had once stood there, a relic from another era. As she walked, a faint sound caught her ear. She paused, tilting her head, wondering if she'd imagined it. The sound came again, drifting like smoke on the wind. A child's laughter, soft and distant. She frowned, scanning the area. The field was empty, just as it had been moments before. Perhaps it was the wind, she thought, but something felt unsettling. Each time she passed the field in the days that followed, she heard the sounds again. At first, it was barely audible, but soon, she started catching snippets of conversations, fragments of games, and sing-song rhymes that tugged at the edges of her memory. She shook it off, but the voices lingered in her mind, whispering just beyond the realm of logic. Laura's curiosity morphed into an obsession. She found herself drawn to the field, her steps almost involuntary. The voices were always there, growing clearer, yet they remained elusive, as if hiding just out of sight. At night, she dreamt of the field as it once was, teeming with children, the laughter sharp and clear, echoing in her mind. She began looking up old records, trying to find any information about the schoolhouse, the students, the teachers. She found a photograph in the town library, an old, sepia-toned image showing a group of children standing in front of the school. Her eyes fell on one child, a girl in the front row with bright eyes and a wide grin. Laura's breath hitched. It was her. Seeing herself, younger and carefree, unlocked a flood of memories she had long buried. The voices weren't strangers. They were echoes of a time she had left behind. She felt a strange kinship with her younger self, the child she had once been. Laura began journaling her experiences, writing down everything she heard, everything she remembered. The laughter, the voices. They became both a source of comfort and a haunting reminder of her lost innocence. As she wrote, she reflected on the years that had passed, on the choices she had made that led her away from home. The voices, she realized, were a part of her. They carried the essence of a time she could never return to, but they also held wisdom. They reminded her of who she had once been, a person she had lost touch with in the bustle of adulthood. One evening, standing alone in the field, Laura closed her eyes, focusing on the voices. They sounded close, as if the children were playing just behind her. Though when she opened her eyes, she saw nothing but empty grass. "Why are you here?" she whispered into the darkness, her voice thick with emotion. A laugh floated by, so close it sent a shiver down her spine. It sounded eerily familiar, a voice she hadn't heard in years. And then she recognized it, her own laughter, the carefree sound of a younger Laura. The revelation left her breathless. She wasn't just hearing children. She was hearing herself, a fragment of her past that had lingered, waiting to be acknowledged. The voices in the field were more than just memories. They were reminders of everything she had lost and everything she had gained. She felt both joy and sorrow as she remembered the dreams she'd had, the friends she'd loved, the carefree days she'd taken for granted. She realized that the field, though empty now, was a testament to all that had once been. It was a sacred space, a place where memories lived on, echoes of laughter immortalized in the wind. Standing there, Laura found herself conversing with her past, with the child she had been and the adult she had become. In the days that followed, Laura felt a strange sense of peace. The voices faded, becoming softer, until one day, they were gone altogether. She visited the field one last time, feeling its silence like a gentle embrace. The emptiness no longer frightened her. Instead, it filled her with gratitude. As she stood there, she whispered a quiet goodbye to her younger self, to the friends she had known, to the dreams she had once chased. She knew she couldn't hold on to the past, but she could carry it with her, a part of her story, woven into the fabric of her being. The experience had left her changed, more aware of the transient beauty of life. As she turned to leave, she felt lighter, her heart unburdened, as if she had finally laid her past to rest reflecting on her journey. Laura understood that the voices she had heard were echoes of her own soul, reminders of the parts of herself she had forgotten. The field had given her a gift, a chance to reconnect with her past and find closure. It taught her that the people and places we leave behind are never truly gone. They live on in us, shaping who we are and who we will become. The story ends with Laura finding solace in the knowledge that while life moves forward, the echoes of our memories remain, whispering to us in quiet moments, reminding us of who we are and where we come from.